Welcome to Wilder Wolves, Hall of Fame Mode Fandom. My name is Wilder Adams, and we brought back my guy who was just on Wolves Fandom Friday the other week, and I had to get him right back on for a perfect show topic for him, my good friend Michael. Michael, what's good, my guy?
Nothing much, man. Glad to be back on here with you, man. Just glad to be
Dude,
back.
it's a quick turnaround, my guy, but we talked the last week, and I had a show idea that I was generating, and we can see it in the background with your
Yeah,
portrait back there. How
yeah,
I thought this would be a perfect fit for you to be back on. So before we transition, this is going to be a Vikings Timberwolves crossover video. So
yeah.
essentially, in celebration of the Minnesota Vikings training camp and the fact there's nothing going on in the Timberwolves world, we are
hmm
going to directly compare Timberwolves players to Minnesota Vikings players. So, Michael, first of all, how are you feeling on that?
I'm happy, man. I'm excited. These are my two babies right here, man. So I'm happy. Let's go.
Man, I've seen you the last couple years, man. You've gone through a lot of heartbreak, a lot of tough conversations on the telephone, some deep debates, and I was right there with you, my guy. So
Dude, nothing. Do you remember the Memphis series? I think it was 2020 Memphis Wolves.
that
That
was
first round,
2022, right?
2022.
Yeah.
God, I remember venting. I remember we were both like venting to each other, like, "No, it's gonna be okay." Yeah,
Dude, I always say this. Like the shot to my heart that series was when Tyus Jones hit that dagger three in game 5. And I was like, you are making threes for years for this team. That like head hit she always did, and he just splashing them. That was like a double-edged middle finger at me, dude.
to
I
everyone. Yeah.
everyone. That was a middle finger to everybody in the stadium. But shout out Tyus Jones, man. You are one of the best Minnesota basketball players ever. So don't want to disrespect you, but that did
Mhm.
hurt my spirit. But before we get right into the meat of the show, it's pretty funny though, because now it's 2025 and the Timberwolves just made back-to-back conference finals. The
Yeah.
Vikings are coming off of a 14-3 season, implementing a top 10 draft pick quarterback after he had a year to sit back. And by the way, the last quarterback to sit a full year as a number 10 overall pick essentially was Patrick Mahomes. I'm just
Okay.
spreading the facts here. I'm just
Wha-
spreading the facts here.
Okay. I'm not mad at it. Let's go.
So, my question for you, Michael, is this the best situation that the Timberwolves and Vikings have been in together at the same time of all time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's not even close. Since I've been alive, I'm 23 years old. Like these two teams being good together at the same time. This is the first time I've seen it. I think the only other year was maybe 2018 when or 2017-18 when the Wolves got Jimmy and then we had signed Kirk, the Vikings signed Kirk. And I'm thinking we're coming off the NFC Championship game with Case Keenum, so that's the only other year that compares. This is easily the best I've seen the two together. Yeah,
Plus, I think with the Timberwolves in our history, it's pretty easy to narrow down the times in which both teams were good at the same time. The Vikings just had to be good at that time too.
yeah,
So yeah, 2018, it was pretty near to that. Like it was the Case Keenum year, the Butler
yeah,
year,
yeah.
right?
I
The
think older guys would say like the early 2000 Wolves and like
Mhm.
Culpepper, Moss, Carter, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
that's the last time I was doing my research before this show, and there was a 3 year stretch, of course, before the Timberwolves made the conference finals. The KG, they were like a 50 to 51 winning team a couple years in a row. They couldn't get out of the first round, essentially.
yeah,
And the Vikings at that time were still really good, and Moss was fantastic. But of course, the Vikings weren't peaking then because that was the 98 season
yeah.
when we saw Moss and just the dynamic offense that brought
Mhm.
Culpepper, of course.
And then Gary Anderson. I don't mean to always bring up heartbreak, but it's a Minnesota thing. So like Gary Anderson.
You know what, man? But this time, hopefully, it's different. We've said that many times,
No,
but
this is going to be different.
this is
No,
going to
you're
be
right.
different.
Yeah, you're right.
This is the perfect time of our lives when we're all of us, everybody listening is in different stages. We've had different stories, different paths, but all of it's winding down And these next few years, I'm very hopeful are going to be especially meaningful for whatever your story is. And it's funny because not only are both teams good on
Mm-hmm.
this, but I think they're both very similar because both of them revamped front offices, new coaches, right? Because of course the Vikings with KOC and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, I think all had that headache era with the Mike Zimmer. Shout out to Rick Spielman, man. Shout out to Rick Spielman, but that era felt like it hit its end. So we get these new guys. The Timberwolves, same thing, right? Because we get Chris Finch after the Gerson Rosas situation. He did a good job before all that happened.
He was slowly turning us around. Yeah, he's got to get some credit.
He's got to get a ton of credit because they drafted Ant, Jaden, Naz. Like, that's like the young nucleus. We're all so optimistic. That was Gerson, man. But now we got Tim Connolly. And both organizations, good player-coach combos. Teams are young.
Mm-hmm.
Young. They both have young superstars. Despite not having, like, all these top-end draft picks, both teams have built a pretty good blend of young players and veterans. Do you see that similarity?
Absolutely. And like one of my comps is directly to trading, and like one of my comps is very close to the front office. I'm not gonna spoil it, but one of them is.
Me too,
Yeah.
which makes me excited.
Okay.
I want to see if we're like on the same wavelength here.
Okay.
Yeah, so to explain this show, essentially, there's not like a ton of rules necessarily. Like, we're not like following some certain like criteria, like we're playing Monopoly and we have to follow these rules to make these player comps. We're all just kind of like, this player is kind of like this player.
Exactly.
Direct comps between the Vikings and Timberwolves, whether it's game, whether it's role, whether it's story, team context. I think subconsciously considered all of that to formulate these comparisons. And I'm not sure about Michael's. He talks crazy sometimes, so we might have to calm him down a little bit. That's what I'm here for. But
we'll see it. Watch you say if you're gonna make a comp that I don't like, I'm gonna get on you right here.
As you should, man. That's the nature of the show, Yeah. But Michael, so we're gonna go back and forth to kind of lead player conversations. So like you have the first player, I'll have the second player, and we'll go back and forth. Michael's going to start out with Anthony Edwards. And Michael, what is your Anthony Edwards comp for the Vikings? I'm sure we have similar ones.
The most obvious, I think this is the easiest one on the list. It's Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson and Ant. It's literally the two biggest stars, arguably in their sports, one, but in Minnesota easily. For me, it was when you first brought this idea up, it was like, okay, that's the one. And then the list goes on from there. Both the young star of the city, both have took their teams by storm. Drafted in were they no drafted in the same year. Drafted in the same year. So like what they mean to the city, what they mean to me, they're my favorite athletes in both sports. So this one was an easy one to make. Justin Jefferson and that.
Yeah, man, and I think it's perfect because I want to show you guys something really quick before I give my explanation. So here is why it's an obvious comp right here, this frame.
You just have Naz Reid in there.
And then there's just Naz Reid in here, bro. Yeah, he's just like an additive to the thing. But in reality, Naz Reid's always the main thing. Yeah, dude, man, it's an obvious comp, right? 2000s.
It's super obvious, man. They're both, in my opinion, they're both the best player at their position. Might be a hot take. It depends if you count Shea or Luka as a two guard, but to me, they're the best players at their position. They're the best. They're the most exciting young player. Justin Jefferson might not be a young player anymore. He's kind of in his prime now, but they're the most exciting players at their position and probably in their league, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, they're also, if you make the 2000s comp, Vikings with Moss and KG, both of them added a certain level of athleticism, confidence, it factor, both drafted at similar times. Ant and Jefferson brought the same thing. They're just the center of Minnesota sports culture right now, not only just on the field, but like you mentioned, the electric personality, the athletic plays, their versatility, the way that they've kind of backboned just
Yeah.
the ascension of both franchises, right? Because the Timberwolves are kind of going nowhere beforehand.
Yes.
The Vikings are kind of good, never bad
Yeah.
every year, but pretty mediocre a lot of the
Man,
time.
the
Both of
joy
them,
they bring, the joy they bring, watching them play, they're entertainers, man.
they're entertainers,
So,
man. And not only are they just helping the team be better, but they play with that it factor, that electricity. They're the centers of Minnesota sports culture now. So yeah, the Anthony Edwards, Justin Jefferson pick makes a ton of sense. And hopefully both of them are leading their teams deep in the playoffs going forward because they are the center of Minnesota sports.
exactly.
All right. So Anthony Edwards, Justin Jefferson, that was not a tough one.
Yeah.
And to further add to the fact, you can argue both of them are top tier young players to build around, which is crazy to say for a wide receiver. But Justin Jefferson's been number 2 on the NFL's top 100 list.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's had Kirk Cousins, he's had Sam Darnold, and both teams have won 13 plus football games. And he's the center of those offenses that are pretty darn good usually. So I would say Jefferson's a top tier young player to build around, even if he's not in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
And similar to Anthony Edwards, he's one of those dudes where you think like the big point guard who can pass or the dominant two-way center. Anthony Edwards is a shooting guard. And some people assume that position was kind of fading away in terms of impact. And he's proven to be a top-tier young player to build around both on the floor and culturally, despite not fitting the mold of a lot of other players. And I think both of them have that also common denominator with how they represent their franchises in a dominant fashion. So let's move forward to the next one because this is my first one. I think you're going to like this one. I'm going to talk about Julius Randle right here.
Okay.
And my Julius Randle comp is Jonathan Greenard.
Wow. Wow.
Hear me out, okay?
No, I had the same one. Go ahead.
Perfect. Because you're mentioning front office stuff. I wonder if that's what you're insinuating.
Yes.
But let's talk about the storyline. Danielle Hunter was the super high level, becoming expensive franchise level defender on the Vikings. Karl Anthony Towns has been the face of the Timberwolves franchise for nearly a decade, becoming a little too expensive to overcome. And both front offices said, you know what? Let's get about 90% of that player who's a lot cheaper to bring into the team so you can build around them with a couple more players. And Karl Anthony Towns gets traded for Julius Randle, who is like, a lot of people would say 90% the player Cat is, but now he's making a little over half the money Cat is. And they're kind of like the faces of you're keeping the talent, but you're making their teams deeper. Of course, the Vikings, they bring in Van Dinkel. They're able to bring in a couple other players with the money that they're able to save from that trade. Or the Danielle Hunter signing is not really a trade, even though they swap teams, oddly. But yeah, and I think both made their offense, their side of the ball better, right? Karl Anthony Towns, the Timberwolves were a 17th ranked offense with him that last year. You trade Cat, and you're like, what are they doing with their offense now? And then they get better on offense. And the Vikings defense got better last year. And it's because, of course, Greenard and Randle can bring almost as much production as the recent player for what the team needs, but they're deeper now and they're more dynamic and they can do more. So I just felt like that was a very clean comp.
No, I absolutely agree. And Greenard's a really good player. And I feel, and same with Randle, I feel like a lot of people kind of, I don't want to say didn't know with Randle, like Randle's been an all-star, but like with Greenard came in 10.5 sacks. He had the most pressures in the league last year, I think up until like week 16. But Greenard's a special player. Randle's a special player. Greenard, you can argue, is also the best defensive player on the team. Not saying Randle is, but like our best defensive player. But Greenard, I love that comp. That's the comp I went with too. I was struggling with a Randle comp. Thought a different player. I was thinking Darrisaw for Randle, but I'm like, just because I think Darrisaw is our second best player on the Vikings, of course. But ultimately, I landed with Greenard. So that's a really good comp.
Like we mentioned in the beginning, there's not like a straightforward criteria or rule book on how we come up with these comps. This one was very story motivated because it's a very similar story. You have to trim down some money. You have to get a little deeper. And Daniil Hunter was the sacrificial lamb that way. So it's
Mhm.
Karl Anthony Towns. As heartbreaking as it was, as big of a, cultural staple those two both were, moving off of both of those guys and just trimming it down, it made both teams better somehow. So, yeah, I think it's a great comp. And let's move forward to the next comp because, Michael, you got Rudy Gobert. And I'm very curious to see if we have the same one.
I got Rudy Gobert in the comp I went with. Shockingly, I was thinking the whole time, like, do I go a defensive player? Do I go one of our better defensive players? And this is gonna be a weird one, but stay with me. I went TJ Hockenson for Rudy. Yeah. I was thinking you make a trade. In basketball, divisions don't really matter, but you make a trade with the Jazz. Vikings made a trade with the Lions. There's a trade in division.
Okay.
The main reason for my comp is, and I don't know if I'm the only Viking fan that feels this way, but as great as TJ Hockenson is, there's always that little bit of frustration with him where, like, I don't trust his hand sometimes. I don't know if I'm the only Viking fan that feels this way. I just always feel like anytime there's a contested catch, a contested jump ball, there's always a chance Hawkinson's going to drop. He had a drop problem. Sometimes he's not as physical as I want him to be. Like I see other tight ends. You see the George Kittles, the Mark Andrews, and it feels like Hawkinson's like outside of that tier. I look at that with Gobert and like the other centers where it's like Gobert might not be he's not a Jokic or an Embiid, but he's right outside that top 5-ish center. So that's the comp I went there. I want to know what you think. What do you think?
Yeah, so we went – it's not a bad comp, first of all. It's just a very different way of going about it because you went really similar with the Gennard thing. It's the bold trade in division, parallel stories, and both are good but controversial in some ways. I know some Viking fans who really don't like, what Hockenson brings to the table consistently. Of course, Rudy Gobert gets a lot of backlash. So I get it there. And, it's funny because I went through in the lens, because there's no rules on this. I went through the lens of appreciation. And my first thought with Rudy Gobert is he's highly underappreciated. What he does on the field isn't sexy. It's not going to pop off the screen or the box score very often. So when I thought of what Rudy Gobert brought to the game, I thought of in the trenches. And I wanted to lean into the trenches on this one. Okay. And I think Rudy Gobert is the best in the trenches player on the team. And I think Christian Darrisaw is the best in the trenches player too. Well, here's the thing, because both are underappreciated in both different ways. Darrisaw is arguably top 3 in his position when healthy. He's never made a Pro Bowl yet.
Yeah,
which I think is crazy. Like, it's not really a debate that he's one of the best at his position, but for some reason he can't make a Pro Bowl team. So I think that's a testament to how underrated he is as a football player. And I think Rudy Gobert, he's got the accolades, which is the contrast between he and Darrisaw, but I think Gobert is told all the time he doesn't deserve his accolades. He's told he doesn't deserve his money. And it's like he's one of the only players I've ever seen where people just don't care about what he wins and what he earns. It feels like it's sort of like that with Harden and Embiid a little bit. Like they don't care about the MVPs and the titles because it feels like undeserved, which I think is nonsense. It's not true. But I think Rudy Gobert gets that backlash like he doesn't have any accolades, and Darrisaw literally doesn't, which is crazy to me because he deserves it. He gets paid like it, and no one worries about how he gets paid because we all don't question what he brings to the field.
He's like, the world treats Rudy like he's Aaron Baines, man. And it's sad to see no disrespect to Aaron Baines, but the world treats Rudy terrible, man. Rudy has, before Rudy joined the Wolves, like every other basketball fan, you're kind of like, okay, there's this guy in Utah Utah's a great team at the time, but it's like, it's because of Donovan Mitchell. If you're a real basketball fan, you're watching Utah and you're like, I'm seeing Joe Ingles and Bogdanovich on the perimeter. Why is this defense so good? And it's Rudy. And you really don't appreciate Rudy until you're watching him night in, night out, like we've been doing the last couple of years, man. He's a treat.
And I think, partially with social media culture, especially, people are watching for highlights, and Christian Darrisaw is not going to have a highlight reel. He's not going to be on SportsCenter's top 10. he's just playing good football and he's in the trenches. And sometimes when he does a good job, but the interior offensive line doesn't show up, nobody's going to mention what Darrisaw did because one bad egg in the line can crack the whole shell. So I think that's why Darrisaw gets underrated. I'm hopeful that this is the year with just a stronger nucleus in the interior that Darrisaw is going to get the attention he deserves. And, I thought Rudy Gobert would get more credit by making back-to-back conference finals. But you know what? I think Rudy Gobert can win 5 MVPs and he would still get hated.
He can win the finals MVP when we win the chip next year, and he's not going to get any credit. I'm telling you.
And they'll say it was given to him. It was given to him like the DPOYs. It's crazy what Rudy gets. And Darrisaw doesn't get hate. He's a likable player. But it's kind of like Rudy, they acknowledge their distaste for him, whereas Darrisaw doesn't get acknowledged. It's just like, I like him, and you don't think about it. And I don't think he even deserves that. So, okay. So that was a fun conversation. Hockenson for you and Darrisaw for me. I see where you're coming from on that. Very similar to the Greenard thing, by the way. Okay. So we talked about it before the show. Jaden McDaniels. This was not an easy one, but the way I thought about this one, kind of personality and just like dynamic relationship wise to the star young player on the team. So I said Jaden McDaniels is Jordan Addison.
Okay.
And the way I thought about this, it's Anthony Edwards and then it's Jaden McDaniels on the pecking order of young stars on the team, right?
Okay.
I think they're kind of like yin and yang when you think of like the Vikings young players in terms of image of the team. And then similar with the Vikings, everybody thinks about Jefferson. And then it's like, who's the next guy? And everybody's like, oh, it's Jordan Addison. And of course, they complement each other, like same position, whereas Jaden helps hide in on defense, things like that. But I think considering just how they're viewed within a national context as kind of the secondary young player on the team, you also think about they both kind of have stoic personalities, I would say. You don't hear Jordan Addison talking nearly as much as Justin Jefferson. You don't hear Jaden McDaniels talking nearly as much as Anthony Edwards. So, yeah, that's how I went with that.
Yeah, for Jaden, I had a weird one. I actually went Byron Murphy for Jaden.
Okay, style.
I was just going DB, going our best DB, our best defender. That's kind of was my mindset there.
Yeah, so like when you think of Byron Murphy and Jaden McDaniels, so like what like really shined for you to just make that connection as players?
Washington won. They both went to Washington as well. So that's where it kicked off at. And then just like Byron Murphy, really good defender. Jaden, really good defender. That's kind of really, it's kind of simple as that. I really didn't. That one was Jaden. Jaden was I was struggling with Jaden a little bit. So but I landed on Byron Murphy because that's what I went with.
Plus, Byron Murphy, great perimeter defender. Jaden, great perimeter defender, right? Like Byron Murphy, you can just expect to lock it in from the outside. And Jaden, despite his size, you kind of throw on any point guard imaginable. So I could see that. And yeah, I mean, play style wise, I can see that. It's pretty interesting how like when you talked about Gobert and Hockenson, their specialties were flipped on sides of the ball, but this time you went correlated, play style wise. So I think that's interesting one. That's interesting. Okay, Naz Reid, bro. This is gonna be interesting. I think we're gonna have way different ones on this one.
Okay, Naz, I went Josh-Metellus. Josh-Metellus for the Vikings is a Swiss Army knife player. He's the player in the league that everyone knows he can play every position. Naz can't play every position, but if you just watch Naz, you're like, that's a point guard in a 6'10" man's body. Mm-hmm. So that's what I went with Josh. I went with Josh and I went with Naz, man. And I think Josh has became like a fan favorite in Minnesota. Like a lot of people, if you follow him on Twitter, he's always on Twitter tweeting. He's a fun follow. Josh to me is entertaining. I love watching Josh-Metellus. Love watching Naz Reid. Both very likable. Both may not get all the credit. Naz might never make an All-Star game. Josh Metellus might never be the All-Pro safety. You know what I mean? But while they're here, we still appreciate them. They both got paid by us this offseason as well.
Yup. That's a good
I
point.
love that. So that's my comp for those two guys.
I like your comp a lot. And I love this because we're like going way afar from each other in terms of how we're going about this, which is why I love this. And to add to your Metellus point, because I really like that comp, he wasn't a high draft pick. He was a very late draft pick. And Naz Reid went undrafted. And they had to kind of fight their way through the team and overcome odds and overcome depth at their positions, right? Because Minnesota feels pretty deep at front court pretty consistently. And the Vikings and that safety group feels like they always have somebody next to Harrison Smith, right?
Yeah.
Deep on both sides of the ball. And okay, my comp for Naz, and this one was hard for me actually.
Was it?
Yeah, because I went image more so than anything.
Okay.
I went Harrison Smith.
Explain.
Technically, Naz Reid is the longest tenured Timberwolf on the team.
Okay.
Harrison Smith is the longest tenured Viking by a country mile. Harrison Smith, in my opinion, is the most popular, just long-term cultural staple on the team. Because Harrison Smith, outside of Justin Jefferson, I would say he's the next name, right? He has roots planted in Minnesota. That is a hardcore Viking that is never changing. Mm-hmm. Naz Reid, technically the longest tenured, like I said. Even though he got drafted 7 years later, but we'll skip past that fact. Naz Reid is Timberwolves basketball. He has billboards. He has commercials. I'm sure he's never paid for a beer in his life in Minnesota. You have restaurants that say honk if you love Naz Reid. Everybody loves the guys. And they're one of the first couple names you think of when you think of Minnesota Vikings football, Minnesota Timberwolves basketball. And outside of the main stars on the team, Harrison Smith's a Hall of Famer, don't get me wrong. And Naz Reid probably, you never know, I'll never count out Naz Reid in my life. That's why I'm making Bitcoin investments right here. But he represents Timberwolves basketball. And I think both are just going to be one of those guys. They're just hard. I think they're outside of stardom. Mm-hmm. They're just staples of the team culturally and emotionally. And that's why I made that connection.
Okay, that's fair. At first, I was like, what is this guy talking about? But then, like, he kind of, I could see it, yeah.
Yeah, man. That's a great manipulation tactic, right? Just spinning like what's probably an awful comp and trying to find any scraps of connection. But that's where my brain went.
I thought if we did Harrison Smith, it was gonna be an older guy. So
I got a funny name for that one actually.
Okay,
I know what you're talking about though. Okay, so you wanted to talk about Jalen Clark. So this is kind of a jump up because Clark isn't one of the first 7 guys in the rotation, but you wanted to talk about him. So I want to hear your comp for him.
Okay, stick with me here. I went Macai-Blackmon for this one. Macai-Blackmon, Vikings fans, man. Macai-Blackmon last year, I believe he tore his ACL out the entire year last year. But his rookie year was really good. Like the injuries they both suffered. I think Jalen had an ACL injury as well. And right?
Yeah. So he had an Achilles injury. He tore his
Achilles. Okay. Yeah. All right, got you. Well, both came back from injuries, or both had an injury. When Macai comes back from his injury, I'm automatically expecting him to take off from where he left off because I thought Macai's rookie year was very underrated. I thought he was really good in a year where it was the Ed Donatel defense. It wasn't great. Macai kind of stood out. Jalen last year stood out. We all remember the OKC game later on in the season. There's a lot of promise with those two players. Like, Macai's one of my favorite players on the defense. Like, and I've only seen 1 year of him. And Jalen's already, like, arguably in my top 5 Wolves. And I haven't seen a lot of them, but I don't know. There's that weird belief. I just believe in those two guys, man. And both guys went UCLA, USC, I guess Pac-12 or former Pac-12 guys. So
LA guys, right?
LA guys, yeah. So that's why I made that comp at.
I think it's a great comp, and I was thinking about it, and it just felt too perfect
Yeah,
because both of them kind of also creeped into the idea. I don't even think Makai was he the first corner taken in his draft. I'm not sure if he was
Makai wasn't. No,
in terms of just on the team. Was there somebody else who went over? I might be crazy. I might be
I
totally
don't
wrong.
doubt it. We've drafted a lot of corners, so
Was it? Was it?
yeah.
I don't remember what year he got drafted. Oh my goodness. Something is telling me, like my lizard brain, he wasn't the first corner drafted in that draft. So he kind of had to creep into the team. And Jalen Clark,
Was it Kyrie? Kyrie Jackson? Was it? Was it? No.
no, Kyrie
No, that was
Jackson.
last year.
That was the year after.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Rest in peace to
Yeah.
Kyrie Jackson.
RIP. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I think Blackman was a late third round pick, and then
Yeah.
Jackson was a fourth round pick. Um, I'm not sure why my brain's telling me he was. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. I can't really tell you. But back to the important point. They both kind of creeped on. I mean, I remember joking because I actually saw Jalen Clark's first game, and my dad and I were like, he kind of spawned on the team because he was a 52nd pick. He kind of,
Yeah.
he had the Achilles injury. Would have been a first round pick if it wasn't for that,
Easy.
but kind of sat behind, worked his way back, and nobody talked about him. And everybody's like kind of, talking about Josh Minot and Leonard Miller and who's the next guy. And then Chris Finch just threw him out in the rotation against the Phoenix Suns in that late January night. And he looked good that game, and not a complicated game, just great feel and great defense, smart off ball instincts, and just a smart player. And I think Blackman similarly just kind of came in and
Yeah.
didn't mess up a lot for a rookie. And that's hard to
Yeah.
say, especially for a corner.
Exactly.
It's a great comp. Okay, this is a fun one. I think this is the fun one. I got Rob Dillingham.
Mm.
Okay, so the way I thought about this, Rob Dillingham, big expectations year 2, top 10 pick, didn't really play year 1. And I think I gave it away pretty quickly. I compared Rob Dillingham to J.J. McCarthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way I view it, J.J. McCarthy's kind of given the keys, right, to the car on this team. And a lot is dependent on our quarterback play being sufficient to play at the highest level. Didn't really play year 1. Who knows if he would have beat out Sam Darnold or not. I kind of lean he wouldn't just because of how good Sam Darnold looked. It's even though like it's system and all of that, I have a tough time seeing J.J. McCarthy just being better than what Sam Darnold did last year. So kind of assuming he would have sat a lot of year 1 too. But either way, he watched, he learned, he grew, and then he has the keys to the team after the team had a very high level season, 1 game away from the 1 seed, and now he's expected to drive this team even further. Minnesota, the Timberwolves, they're coming off of back-to-back conference finals. Everybody saw the regression Mike Conley had last year, and it's pretty evident they need to address the point guard position. But at this point in time, they haven't. And the question is, sure, is that partially flexibility? Sure. But they could have worked their way around it if they wanted to. How much of this is they are trusting Rob Dillingham, his growth enough, and just the ascension of the young players to kind of pick up that fortress and have the car drive smoothly? Because this team, I don't care how young they are. I don't care how many guys they try to integrate. This team made back-to-back conference finals, and they want to push forward and advance on top of that. But according to the national media, this team has no point guard, which is like the key, the driver of the team. And the Vikings, the only reason people aren't saying the Vikings are a Super Bowl favorite is because people are questioning if J.J. McCarthy is ready. So I think the stakes on both teams' contention hopes lie in on a top 10 draft pick entering their second year.
Exactly. I think you can make the argument that they're both like, as far as pressure goes, the most pressure on the Wolves going into next year, any player, is probably Rob. And it's crazy to say it's the second year, and for the Vikings, it's JJ. So this is a good comp, and I had the same comp as well. Same thing.
They both just have so much to prove. And I mean, if JJ McCarthy this year doesn't show up with one of the best lines in the league, the best receiving core in the league, top 10 running back tandem in the league, and that defense and that coaching, you have to question JJ McCarthy if he can't bring that team far. And I think if Minnesota doesn't get a good year from Rob Dillingham, everybody's going to be begging for a point guard.
Exactly.
So as unreasonable, as unfair it is, both of them feel like they have one chance before teams are begging for other options. And I personally think they'll deliver. I'm hopeful they'll deliver. And I'm higher on JJ McCarthy than I am on Rob Dillingham, but I have hope that both can be really good players. And clearly both teams think that too, because Minnesota seems comfortable with where they have Dillingham and where they have the point guard position. And likewise for the Vikings with the quarterback position, because as much as, the national media and shows like The Herd and et cetera want to make it sound like the Vikings are begging for another quarterback, the Vikings are like the really good looking girl at the bar. If the Vikings wanted a quarterback, they can get a quarterback. So I don't want to hear this nonsense. Ooh, they're flirting with Aaron Rodgers. Oh, they're flirting with Daniel Jones. If they wanted those guys, they would have it. But Daniel Jones left because he didn't feel like the Vikings were going to give him a starting job. And clearly they didn't want Aaron Rodgers, because if they had Aaron Rodgers, he'd be starting over J.J. McCarthy. And I don't want to hear the Sam Darnold, they offered him a contract. No crap. He made a Pro Bowl. If you don't offer him a contract, you look like jerks. It was literally like, okay, we have to offer him a contract here. Here's 1 year. So the Vikings gave the J.J. McCarthy full confidence to being a starter. And people are just trying to spin that in the national media, which I think is completely just oblivious. And Timberwolves, same thing. They're kind of like, yeah, we saw what happened in the playoffs last year. We saw what happened with, the point guard position.
Yeah.
We just traded up for Rob Dillingham. By the way, both players got traded up.
Yeah.
So, I see a lot in both.
But they're both 10th picks too?
No, Rob was the 8th pick.
8th pick. Okay, got you.
But if you kind of think from like the equivalent, like the 10th pick in the NFL is like the 3rd or 4th pick in the NBA, if you think about it. So, McCarthy was a higher valued asset, but I just think both have a lot to prove this year, but also a ton of talent and a lot of reasons to be excited for. Okay, Terrence Shannon.
Terrence Shannon, this is where my Jordan Addison comp came in. Both late first round, both incredible players in college. Jordan Addison, Biletnikoff winner. Terrence Shannon, his last year at Illinois. You could have argued he could have won Player of the Year.
Okay.
So that was my comp. Both players that I'm this year or going into next year, for both guys, I'm expecting big things. I'm expecting Terrence Shannon to step into his role next year, whether that's coming up, probably going to be coming off the bench. And I'm expecting Addison, even though Addison's going to have the setback with the suspension probably, I'm expecting him next year to be a 1,000-yard receiver, a Pro Bowler. I'm expecting Terrence Shannon to take the step. Terrence Shannon, I legit think, could be like a top 5 scorer for the Wolves next year. You get top 5.
I don't think that's crazy.
You don't think that's crazy? I think some people would probably say, but
let's think about who. Let's think about who the Timberwolves have as clear scoring options. It's Ant, it's Randle, it's Naz.
Rudy's gonna score because he's the starting center.
And then there's Donte, but I would argue like Rudy averaged 10 last year, and Donte averaged 11. I think those guys. Jaden, I would have Jaden over.
Yeah,
because he's going to get the minutes. I mean, there's a world where Shannon's 5th, right?
Yeah.
How many points a game are you thinking for Shannon?
Say 12 a game, 12, 13 a game.
Okay. Yeah, that's I can see that. It's kind of like,
is it a little bit of a weird comp? Kind of a reach?
No. I think it's an interesting comp. I just had a very different approach on it.
In my mind, I'm just thinking Addison's the second fiddle to Jefferson. Okay. And in my mind, in a perfect world, respect to Jaden, Terrence Shannon would be my second fiddle to Ant. That's just kind of how I was looking at it.
Ooh, okay. So you're that high on Shannon being like a legitimate complimentary player. Okay. I mean, I can see it, man. I can see it. Okay. So I'll give you my comp. All right. So Shannon, I compared to Ivan Pace Jr.
Wow.
So Ivan Pace was kind of like he went undrafted, a little undersized. There's some questions like, is he big enough to play in the NFL the way he wants to play? I think Shannon, with the way he attacked, there was like, maybe like, is he going to just be able to bully people in the NBA without it being a foul machine, or is he just going to be too scaled down to do that? I think there are some questions with Shannon on that. And I think Shannon proved that what he does works in the NBA. I think Ivan Pace clearly proved what he does works in the NFL. And I think both have become kind of the fan favorites, like the underdog who took a big step. And I mean, Ivan Pace, I feel like the hype cooled down a little bit the last year, but people still like him a lot, right? And that's kind of who I think about it with. So
not a bad comp. I wasn't thinking Ivan Pace though, but that's fair.
I had to go deep in the weeds on that.
Yeah, that's kind of a pull.
I had to go deep in the weeds on that.
Yeah.
Okay. I love this comp I'm about to give you. Okay.
Okay.
Joan Beringer. I always do that. Joan Beringer. We got a lot of cool French players on this team all of a sudden.
I know.
My comp is Dallas Turner.
Yep.
And there's a lot of parallels here. Both were the 17th pick in their respective draft.
Ooh.
Both are like the raw, super freakish athlete that you have to refine a little bit, but when you see them play, you see flashes of superpowers. Like Turner didn't play a lot last year, and I anticipate similarly for Beringer, but Turner late in the year really started to pick up on moments, even though we didn't see much the first half of the year. And Beringer, I mean, Summer League, we'll see what he does on an NBA court, but it took one Summer League game to be like,
yeah,
he's got it.
And you can argue they both fell in their draft a little bit, right? Yeah. Like Dallas Turner in his draft was everyone thought would be the first defensive player taken off the board.
He was the first defensive player that year.
No, he was, but I mean, like, it was a run of like 16 straight offensive players.
Wasn't there somebody who went one pick before him, though? I think there was.
Was it Latu?
Who was the 16th pick, 2024? Yeah, I think he was the second defensive player taken. Yeah, it was Byron Murphy. The second. Is that right? I'm just looking.
I don't think Murphy went to the Seahawks. I don't think they.
The tackle, yeah. Nope. Is Byron Murphy an offensive player?
He's a defensive tackle.
He's a defensive tackle. Yeah, he went one pick before.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so he was the second defensive player taken, and I think both with the proper development have what it takes to be really, really high level. I think Dallas Turner has a lot of expectations this year. Yeah. And both players are similarly in a situation for their development. Obviously, there's a lot in the way of Dallas Turner with Greenard and Van Dinkel.
He's got two Pro Bowlers in front of him.
Hargrave, you know what I mean? Like,
oh my goodness,
linebackers. Yeah. It's all over the place. And with the Timberwolves, it's Naz, it's Rudy, it's Randle. But at the same time, coaching-wise, Minnesota can develop bigs, and the Vikings can develop the ends. They got the coaching for it. So, yeah, I think we're both on the same page there. And now let's move on to your last one, right? Okay, wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 7, you have 6, okay? Mm-hmm. So we'll kind of both say the last one. Mm-hmm. But Donte DiVincenzo.
Donte DiVincenzo, my comp for Donte. Probably my favorite white man in the state of Minnesota.
You're not comparing him to me, are you?
You, Donte, and Andrew Van Ginkel are top 3. Donte, Andrew Van Ginkel is my Donte comp. Same with you said with the Randle and Greenard, the trade, right? The trade that happened. Getting Van Ginkel in last year, crazy year. I don't think anyone expected him to have the year he had last year. Dante's going to bounce back this year. Donte didn't have a great shooting year last year, but he had his moments. Great energy players, man. Like they both, when they come in, or when Van Ginkel's on the field, he's going to first game of the year, pick 6. You know what I mean? So you have great moments. Huh?
They're explosive.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just don't. This comp is kind of weird because I kind of feel like I'm just leaning into who they are, and not the players that they are.
You're
But
crazy.
that's fine. That's fine. Is that too crazy to say, Jay? I'm sorry. But hey, that's the comp I went with, man.
I mean, I'll say this: I could see it because they were kind of the supplementary element of a big move.
Yeah.
Right. You let Hunter go, and then you bring in Greenard as your Randle, and then your Van Dinkel as your Donte, and Van Dinkel kind of had his Donte year last year where he's good, but then he really popped, and Donte popped with the Knicks and moved over. So I see the parallel here, and I had a similar thought of the comp on the field, and it's a recent transaction though, so it's not perfect. But I compared Donte to Jordan Mason.
Wow. Okay.
Hear me out on this. So Jordan Mason kind of miscellaneously broke out last year for like 8 games. And Donte kind of did the same thing for the Knicks.
Yeah.
The Vikings stole Mason, you can argue, on a great contract because the 49ers couldn't afford him. Yeah. And Donte was on a 4-year, $48 million deal, which is great in NBA terms, and gets moved over to the Timberwolves. So I kind of thought about it from that contract situation, but also both of them had their like mini breakout, but both are also coming in on that team despite the breakout as second string players. So it's like, is that role right for them? We'll see. Those parallels.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was. You kind of broke it down way better than I could, but that's the comp I went with.
No, I think it's similar. Just we kind of had different players in mind for that.
Wait, who did you have with Donte?
Donte, I just said Mason.
Jordan Mason, yeah, running back.
Yeah, because of what he did with the 49ers and all that. But okay, so I got my last one, and then we just have a funny one. Okay.
Okay.
Mike Conley, veteran point guard. I compared to CJ Ham.
What?
Yep.
Explain that.
CJ Ham has become just an amazing cultural veteran on the Vikings. It's not quite the same player as he was a couple years ago, but he's still on the squad and is there as an amazing cultural piece. And Mike Conley, we'll see if he starts next year or not, but we're seeing his role reduce, and he's here as much for the cultural and intellectual reasons as the basketball reasons. And Mike Conley, even on the basketball court, he's kind of he's a teacher on the floor. He really knows how to set up the offense. And CJ is like Harrison Smith in a way. He's seen a lot of iterations on this team. He's had a lot of just background and knowledge of his teammates, and he's just a Viking, in and out. And I just kind of viewed it from that veteran leadership standpoint.
Okay. Yeah, I went with Aaron Jones on that one. Just both coming in, making an impact on the team right away. And then arguably you can say their role is probably Aaron Jones is old in running back years.
Mm-hmm.
And they're bringing the Vikings have already brought in not his replacement, but somebody to come on now. Like Jordan Mason's going to compete for the starting spot. And they say they're going to split, but I fully expect by the end of the year, Jordan Mason's going to be RB1. Same with this year. I think Mike Conley, whether it's Rob, whether it's Terrence, whether it's Donte, like I fully expect Mike not to be the starting point guard at some point before the end of the year. So
I like your comp more than mine. But I will say, do you think, because I thought about the Aaron Jones comp, and what pulled me away from that is I still have really high expectations for Aaron Jones, like on-field production next year. I don't expect a fall off like we saw from Mike last year. And I don't want this show to sound like every episode I talk about how Mike Conley regressed. Mike Conley is
you hate Mike Conley. You can say that.
Huh? I don't hate Mike Conley.
I'm kidding.
I love Mike Conley. He was one of my favorite players when he was on the Memphis Grizzlies growing up. Fun fact, he's actually my first ever playoff game I watched as a kid.
Really?
The Spurs-Grizzlies playoff game.
With the 1-8 series?
It was, I think it was.
Wow, yeah. Okay.
So
was he your first favorite player, or
no? That was Kobe. That was Kobe. Okay. It was Kobe. Then it was Kevin Love. Then it was Steph.
Yeah.
And then it was Jaden McDaniels. But
what a turn!
What? That's crazy. But yeah, I kind of view that I value that veteranship more than the on-field production for both players. And what's your Joe Ingles comp? Because that was the one I wanted to close the show on.
Okay. Joe Ingles is still a Wolf?
Yeah, he signed a 1-year contract.
Okay, sure. My Joe Ingles comp would probably be, I don't want to disrespect my guy here, but it would have to be Harrison Smith, no?
You followed the rules. I didn't follow the rules.
What did you go with?
I went with Patrick Peterson.
What?
Because Patrick Peterson just they're kind of on the team in like the twilight of their careers, right? Like neither are making nearly the same money as they once did. Of course, Patrick Peterson played solid football for a year, then the last year wasn't as good, and Joe Ingles hasn't really played in the first place much. But I just Joe Ingles, I think just kind of the situational how he got to the Timberwolves and how I mean, Joe Ingles was supposed to have a role on this team before the cat trade. I think we forget that. And I prime Joe Ingles on this team, dude, would be so.
It would be nice. Be
nice.
very nice to have.
So I feel like the same thing. The Vikings had prime Patrick Peterson during the Xavier Rhodes era, man. That would have been just disgusting.
Yeah.
So there's not a perfect Joe Ingles comp because there's not like a 36-year-old on the Vikings right now.
Could argue like Gilmore last year, but
that's a good one. That's another one. Like Captain Munnerlyn did too much like that last year.
Yeah, for the Viking, Captain Munnerlyn's a good comp though.
Yeah, that's another one I thought of. There's not a perfect one because in basketball you can only play 9-10 guys in a rotation, and the Vikings they swap in like 30 to 32 every game. So there's not a perfect comp when you get to these points of the roster. But Joe Ingles, man.
Donovan McNabb. 1 year with the Viking where he was brought in to be a starter. They were like, nope.
I don't think you can really go wrong with the comp
for
at this point. But like, I just want to say this before we end the show. Just shout out to Joe Ingles, man, because he has literally been he's actually been like such a critical piece in my opinion for like what he's done for Jaden McDaniels, because just kind of watching the games, he's been such a great veteran and just helping Jaden kind of control his emotions in games. He's brought more value to the team than a lot of people give him credit for. And I think having a tough veteran like that is really rubbed off on a lot of the young players on the team. And Joe Ingles, man, people won't remember in 20 years unless you're a diehard, but Joe Ingles in his prime was a flipping dog. And he's still a dog, and that's still rubbing off on the team.
The OKC series will be one to always remember, him getting underneath Paul George's skin. Yeah.
I remember I was at a Thunder game during the conference finals, and I remember seeing him kind of have an interaction with a fan who was like right next to me. And Joe Ingles doesn't take crap, man, for days. He doesn't take crap. Yeah. And I don't remember what the fan was. It was nearby me. He was kind of talking crazy on Joe. Oh, yeah. He said something about like, Joe Ingles, we look alike, dad bods. That's what he said. And Joe Ingles looked at him and he goes, come on, man. Joe Ingles not taking that, man. He's a dog, bro. So, yeah, that's what it was.
Got him. When we got him, I thought, okay, this is the perfect Kyle Anderson replacement. Just hasn't worked out, you know.
I mean, it's worked out in different ways. I still think the Ingles thing's worked out. Like, people are like, why did they bring him back? And I'm like, you're bringing in a guy on a veteran minimum just to help your better players play better. That's what players at this point of the roster are for. So I was all for Joe Ingles coming back on the roster. I'm not sure where you stood on that.
I'm all for it.
All for
having a vet on the bench is important in the league, so I'm all for it.
The guy's a vibe, dude. The guy's a vibe. And okay, so I want to just shift it to the end of the show. And Michael, I want to hear you just last question of the show. Okay. Who do you think gets further in the playoffs this year, the Vikings or Timberwolves?
Man, the Western Conference is going to be tough. I'm going Wolves, though. I'm going Wolves. I'm saying I think the Wolves get back to the conference finals. I think somehow we find a way to get there. I think we're getting back to the conference. The Vikings, rookie QB. I love our roster. I think we everywhere else we're perfect. Even in the perfect world, I would love to think McCarthy comes in rookie year, Super Bowl. It just doesn't. It just doesn't happen. Like, I think best scenario I'm hoping for the Vikes this year is playoff. Get me to the playoffs and and a win would be amazing. So
it's hard. It's so hard for me.
I'm going. Are you leaning Vikings?
No, I'm leaning Timberwolves.
Yeah, I'm leaning Wolves too.
What is this show, bro? It's not a Vikings show. It's Hall of Fame mode fandom for the Timberwolves, baby. That's what this show is. So I'm always picking the Timberwolves. I'm picking 2/3 of this photo.
This guy.
I'm a Jefferson guy. Shout out to Justin Jefferson. But
does the competition in our conference bother you though? The Western Conference.
Oh yeah. I will say this. I have a rule on this show. After last year, I'm not betting on anybody older than 33. So that's just my philosophy on this show going forward. I think in the NBA, we've kind of shifted eras officially, in my opinion. So like Houston, I'll bet on Minnesota over Houston right now. I'll bet on Minnesota over the Clippers, even the Lakers with Luka Doncic on, high level fitness. And I'm leaning in toward Minnesota's youth, and I think they'll be more mature next year. And I'm optimistic about this year. Let's see if the team stays healthy. And there's still a lot of really good teams. Denver's terrifying, in my opinion, especially since they're so much deeper now after the Michael Porter Jr. trade.
A lot of ifs, but what do you think about Dallas too?
I don't think this is the year for them at all. I'm low on Dallas this year, but I think if they do it right, they're going to position well for next year because Cooper Flag is an 18-year-old kid. You're integrating a point guard in his 30s in the second half of last year. And Anthony Davis, death, taxes, and AD injuries. So he's not going to be healthy this year unless they intentionally preserve his health. And I would do that to better position the team for next year when you have Cooper Flag, going through the grind for 1 year, a year of development with Kyrie and AD healthy. I think 26-27 is the year for Dallas to take a step forward in this era.
Fair enough.
Yeah, Michael, before we end the show, could you tell the audience where they can find you?
Man, I'm on Twitter, TMBIL24. I was in 6th grade when I came up with that username for everything. My PlayStation, everything's that username. So don't make fun of me. And no, it's not T-Mobile, it's TMBIL. So 24. Find me on Twitter. That's the only social media I'm on, guys.
Yeah, and if you guys want to play like 2K online with them, he just gave you his username too. So
my PSN. If you want to get whooped, let me know.
Awesome, Michael. Well, thank you for hopping on the show today, Michael. It was a blast having you on. Thank you all so much for listening to an hour episode of Vikings Timberwolves comparisons at the perfect time, in my opinion, with the Vikings training camp happening. This is Wilder Wolves Hall of Fame mode fandom.